any MS is progressive MS, and all MS really stinks. It doesn't mean we have to have a terrible attitude about it, but we do have to face that reality. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of You and Me and Multiple Sclerosis. My name is Pam. I've had MS for 39 years. I started this channel a few years ago with kind of two objectives. One was to inform and educate and keep everybody apprised of what was happening in the research side of MS, maybe sort out some of the fact from the fantasy. But also, a strong reason for doing the channel was just to be an encouragement to others, because MS is no fun, and it doesn't really matter whether your progression is more or less than somebody else's, because that's kind of subjective anyway, right? The only thing you can experience is your own MS, and I don't know anybody that thinks MS is just a walk in the park or a piece of cake. At some point, in some time or other, you'll be dealing with something that you didn't expect, something that's going to turn your life upside down. But I do realize that sometimes in the course of my trying to maintain a positive focus and to encourage, that perhaps I might be appearing to give short shrift to or minimize or overlook what it's like to live with progressive MS, what it's like to live with any MS at all, really, and that everything can be just hunky-dory. I will admit I've been very blessed up to now, and I don't know what the future holds, but I mean, I am still able to walk, I'm still able to think, I'm still able to speak. There are things I've lost along the way. There are things that I'm in the process of losing. Even as I say this, I know that tomorrow may be somewhat worse than today in some way that's subtle and maybe even hard to put my finger on. But if I look back at a few years ago and what I was able to do and what I can do now, I know things are changing. And I'm not in denial over that. But I did want to just give more of an acknowledgement today that we with MS deserve some time to admit that it just stinks, even if we decide we're going to be positive about it. And so it just so happened that I came across two articles in the same day even that talk about pretty much that very thing. And they say it so much better than I ever could. I'm going to go through those two articles with you, and I think you'll agree that they describe their experiences in ways that are very relatable. The first article that we'll look at comes from Everyday Health. It is a column that's published every month by a friend of mine, Mona Sen. She has had MS for about as long as I've had it, and we're both in secondary progressive, but you probably wouldn't see a lot of overlap in our symptoms. Some, but not a lot. And certainly she has been experiencing the realities of living with progressive MS. And so this particular column caught my eye because, as she says here, I'm so tired of living with progressive MS. And this came out December 1st of 2023. It is not in my nature to say I'm tired, but once in a while I allow myself the healthy way out and acknowledge what is really happening. The truth is that sometimes my oomph runs out and I look for energy that I don't really have to do simple tasks. Once I moved on from the relapsing remitting portion of my 38-year journey with multiple sclerosis, I entered the progressive stage, where everything slows down. Not only did my physicality take a hit, so did everything else, including my attitude. I never thought my attitude would change. I always considered myself a fighter. Somehow multiple sclerosis is winning now. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Accepting help is one way I cope with my limitations. Something as simple as getting out of bed is not easy anymore. I use strategies that have been taught to me, but all in all, my problems begin with getting up in the morning. I wake up and take stock of what is working and how. It gets sad because I am working with half a body. My partner David is always there to help me sit up in bed and then help me to go to the toilet if I need assistance. And by the way, I just want to give a shout out to David. He's been a good friend of ours for years, and he's a wonderful partner for Ramona. He is a carpenter of the highest caliber, and he's made some very nice improvements to their home, including an addition that goes out the back so that she can have a bedroom and a bathroom on the first floor that are accessible to her. So, and he's done many other things to make her life with MS as easy as it possibly can be. And above all, he's always there for her. He's a wonderful sounding board, emotional support, and friend. And when I think of the ideal caregiver for someone with a chronic illness, it's hard to picture someone better than David for that. Although my own husband, Al, is right up there with him. So I think the two of them could probably form some kind of a nonprofit if they wanted to teach others how to be good caregivers, because they're just amazing. She goes on to say, I took a fall trying to independently transfer into my chair from the bed. I became so scared that now someone has to always be there when I transfer. I consider this fear to be very normal. I would agree with that. I confronted the fear by accepting help and not being combative. Actually, I accept help whenever it is offered to me. The way I see it, I need to be healthy and comfortable, but not go overboard. By that, I mean not trying to challenge or outdo myself. One solution I see that is costly is getting an adjustable bed with a remote control that would sit me up. That would eliminate the struggle to sit up on my own. I have worked very hard with my physical therapist on strengthening my core muscles, noble on both our ends, but it just seems like too much work for a possible good result. I am playing with the deck stacked against me. Her point here, though, I think is a very important one. The best physical condition we can possibly keep ourselves in is only going to stand us in better stead, because those muscles aren't going to suddenly work when we need them if we haven't even been using them for a long time. Even muscles that aren't affected by multiple sclerosis directly, they're going to get weaker. And I think if we are going to depend on our leg muscles or our core muscles or any other muscle in the body, we do need to move it. There are many ways to do that that don't really feel like exercise. My latest thing, by the way, just as an aside, is I've made a list of household tasks that are within my ability to do, but they don't get done all the time because they're not as regular as doing the dishes or the laundry. But things like wiping the baseboards, wiping the windowsills, that do not require so much squatting or bending over or whatever, but they are good for you and they're good exercise, they're good movement. So you get the benefit of a clean house plus moving your body around. So anyway, Mona goes on to say, my energy level is unpredictable. Everything I do, I mean everything, from transfers to simple movements, depends on whether I have energy. If I have energy, it's a good day. If I don't, it's a bad day. I am just tired of everything depending on some mysterious something. How in the world am I supposed to live my life this way? All this is unpredictable and tiring. I would second that. Going to the bathroom should not be a huge deal. I have to pull up on the bars, get my balance just right, then hope I end up on the toilet seat in the best possible way so that I can get back up with the bars and spend enormous effort getting my pants and underwear back on. I just don't have the luxury of being able to stand. I have to do this multiple times a day. I am just tired of having to go through this. I can really feel her exasperation. And as I know Mona well, I can just picture how she's feeling about this. It's an awful lot of effort to expend for something that we used to do without hardly even thinking about it. It's easy to resent tasks like that. It's easy to resent those limitations that MS puts on our lives. And as she continues, if I have to go out, it is rarely for fun. As things have turned out, this coming week, I have to go out 3 times, twice for appointments and once for fun. The fun part is my partner David's birthday dinner. Since I cannot plan, I can only hope for a good day. The chips will fall where they may. I just have to put my best foot forward. And then she says I have an ally in my certified nursing assistant. I have an ally in my getting showered, dressed, and ready 3 times a week. A privately hired certified nursing assistant, or CNA, comes in and helps me with tasks I cannot do without losing all my energy. We have bonded well, and she understands me and my needs. My sense of independence has diminished, and I look to others for help. Please don't get me wrong, I am still independent-minded, but I have to pick and choose my tasks. It is only smart that way. Now I am very open to others helping me whenever I need help. And that's a hard lesson for some of us to learn. I'm right there with her on that one. But I'm glad that she is learning that help is necessary to conserve valuable energy for things that really do make our lives a higher quality and worth living. Victoria, my CNA angel, calls me her easiest resident, probably because I am not struggling with dementia and can communicate my needs clearly. She understands my situation and never makes me feel like a burden. It is rare to find someone like her, and I am thankful. And this is a point I'd like to make. If MS does nothing else for you, it will make you appreciate the little things in life, because in the past you were rushing from thing to thing, didn't even hardly notice some of that stuff. Now, little things like kindness really mean a lot. And as she goes on to say, David and I provide a clean, friendly, and comfortable environment for her to be in. She makes it so that I am not tired all the time. After my shower, she insists on my lying on the bed so she can exercise my legs in the way physical therapy has instructed her. After exercising, she plays a meditation app so I can relax. I look forward to her being in my life. She has a hard job, but does it well. And then she says assistive devices and therapists make life a little easier. The changes coming down the pike include getting a new wheelchair through Medicare and my adjustable bed. In my world, these are huge things that will change my life. Other changes include the therapists in my life. The speech therapist is one of my favorite people. She doesn't stay long, but what she says is gold in terms of strategies and ways to handle myself. I am thankful for all the therapists in my life. I know that this is their job, and bureaucracy aside, I feel like they really have my back. All this makes feeling tired a little easier. And I think that's great that Mona ends this on a positive note. In the last year, she's really dealt with some things that have progressed beyond what they had been for some time. Though there was a slow deterioration in some of her functionality, it just seems like this last year she's had some worsening of some things that she rarely had trouble with in the past, notably her ability to speak clearly. It's really caused her to change the speed at which she talks, because she needs to talk slowly enough to articulate clearly. Her tongue isn't functioning like it's supposed to. As we know, the tongue has so many nerves in it, and MS is a malfunction of the nervous system, and so that it's not at all surprising the tongue would be affected by that. I'm sure that others of you are probably dealing with similar problems. She does highly recommend the speech therapist, though. I was on a Skype visit with her recently, and she really can communicate just fine. It's just that she's doing it a little more slowly than she used to. And the frustrating thing for Mona has got to be that her brain is still every bit as sharp as it ever was. It's just that when she talks, people often make the erroneous assumption that she's slow, mentally slow, and that isn't true at all. I know that can be one of the hardest things for those of us with MS to deal with, is that there is this huge disconnect between what the world sees and how the world judges us and what we know is going on inside of us. And I think that when Mona ends this on what I would say is a positive note of appreciation and gratitude, that says something about her resilience in the face of something that she cannot control, she cannot predict, and has certainly taken a big bite out of the quality of her life. The second article is a little older. It came out in September of 2020. It's just as relevant today in 2024 as it was several years ago. It's by Jennifer Powell, The Contrast Between Positivity and the Realities of MS. And she says, I am tired of having multiple sclerosis. I am just so tired of this disease. And you know what? That is okay. Now, that last sentence might have surprised you a little bit because I was expecting her to kind of explain a little bit more about why she was tired of it. But she has sort of summarized, I think, the point of her entire article in this first paragraph, that she's not in denial over what's going on with her MS, but she's not going to let it overtake her ability to decide to have a positive attitude. So let's go on and see what she has to say there. Being tired of MS does not negate my gratitude. It does not replace my joy and zest for life. It is granting myself the grace to be honest about how I feel. I am far too adept at disguising pain, hiding sadness, and ignoring anger. Ever the optimist, I can find good in almost every situation or experience. I have worked for years at cultivating a positive mindset. Yet even the most grateful being would be shaken by my reality. This is not to discourage optimism or its merits. It is to acknowledge my humanity. It is to accept the duality that exists in so many with this disease. Far easier said than done. I peer over the cliff of perennial optimism to reality below. The distance between them has never been as vast. I see danger and virtue in each, yet I have trouble identifying with either, the yin and yang of my existence. Optimism can be a dangerous standard for anyone suffering. We are encouraged to stay positive, yet so often realities are in stark contrast. I limit the honest expression of my experiences to maintain the status quo. This can be exhausting and depressing. Each of us deserves to feel the gamut of our emotions. We deserve to do so without fear of reprisal or rejection. I want to underscore this point that she's making. I think that as we realize we have physical limitations and sometimes mental limitations thanks to MS, we voluntarily restrict our lives to the point where, as I've said in other videos, our lives become too small. We actually could have more experiences and certainly engage more totally in the experiences we do have. But there's a reserve that develops after a while because I think we just become very jaded, and it's almost a defense mechanism as we say to ourselves, well, this is probably going to end in failure, so I'm not going to allow myself to look forward to it or be excited about it or to be overly happy in the moment, because you know what? The next moment might be terrible. And that may be true, that the next moment might be terrible, but we sacrifice the good moments that we could have had in order to brace ourselves for what may or may not even come. So there you go. Thank you, Jen Powell, for making that excellent point. She goes on to say, I spent time with my family this week. As part of a family of avid boaters, my father wanted to take the boat on the bay. Excitement coursed through my veins. I craved sacred time on the bay. In almost the same moment, my heart sank. I wanted to refute my parents' concerns about my joining them. Although they said it was ultimately my decision, the pain soaring through my foot drop gave me my answer. I smiled through tears as I watched them depart. At that moment, I resented everything about my MS. I cursed its existence and severity. I pitied the way it has irrevocably changed my life. I did not need reminding to stay positive. No one needed to point out that I had so much more than most. I did not need to hear that my cup was half full. Even in the throes of sadness, this much is true. Yet that does not disqualify the hurt or negate my heartache. It is important to metabolize its validity. Only then can I somehow reconcile each. Positivity is not so much about ignoring our challenges as it is about accepting them. We are each a sum of our parts, the good and the bad, the pain and the healing, the hope and the fears. Each comprises the patchwork of our existence. Each illustrates a moment in our journey. Alone they are singular. Sewn together, they complement one another, illustrating the beauty and strength in each of us. I can think of nothing more positive. Well, there you go. She ends on a very upbeat note. And I appreciate both of those articles for that very reason. They are incredibly real, and they don't try to whitewash or soft pedal what's going on, but at the same time, they're not going to allow us to get sucked under in the undertow that is MS. Two different perspectives on MS, both realistic, both honest, and yet at the end, both more positive than not. I am not about to tell you that there is a right way to feel about MS. Like MS itself, there's a wide variety of emotions that are brought out, and it's wrong to deny that. It's wrong to repress it to ourselves, to others, especially to ourselves, really. But I think sometimes we feel like the world is calling for us to be brave, suck it up. Hey, other people have it worse than we do, so who are we to complain? Nobody likes to be around somebody who's grumbling all the time, etc., etc. And yeah, okay, there's a grain of truth in some of that, but let's not allow it to keep us from being honest with our emotions and know that if things aren't all sunny and roses, if we feel our quality of life always on this threat to a downhill slide, it's perfectly reasonable to be unhappy about that, even angry about that. And I will tell you that maybe I don't express it on this program very much, but there are days that make me quite angry about what MS is doing to me and what MS is doing to others that I know and care about. I see no cure on the horizon. That doesn't mean there won't be one, but I don't see one right now. That's frustrating. And that's why I focus so much on this channel about what we can do to improve the quality of our life, focusing on what MS might be doing to us if we're not careful, things we could perhaps do to slow it down or stop certain things from happening altogether, if that's possible. Because I know how depressing, how discouraging MS can be, and I just don't want that for you. But I also don't want you to think that I'm being Pollyanna and I'm just glossing over realities, because I know that it isn't so. I realize that everyone with MS is dealing with something that is just frustrating, maddening, discouraging, depressing, fatiguing, go on, any adjective you want to put in there. And I just thought that sharing these two articles today would give you that sense of perspective that maybe sometimes I gloss over a little bit too casually. And I am very sorry if I have done that. MS steals so much from us. And one thing that we shouldn't let it steal from us is our right to validation, including our feelings. But that's all I have for you today. So until I see you again in my next video, take really good care of yourself. It's so important.